Idi Amin Dada, notorious for his tumultuous rule over Uganda, was equally infamous for his love of life's pleasures. A man of contradictions, he delighted in the luxury of fine cars, expensive clothes, grand feasts, and, most notably, the company of women. Amin saw women as both conquests and trophies, and his love affairs often mirrored his approach to power, impulsive, possessive, and driven by raw appetite. In his quest for pleasure and fulfillment, Amin left behind a complex web of relationships, betrayals, and scandals that shaped not only his public image but also left indelible marks on the lives of those closest to him. One of the most striking episodes that encapsulates Amin's complex romantic life unfolded in the early 1960s with his first wife, Malyam, originally Sarah Mutesi Kibedi. Sarah met Amin in 1961 while working at the Singer sewing machine company in Jinja, and was drawn to the magnetic young man who radiated confidence and charm. Their romance blossomed quickly, despite her family's disapproval. Amin's charm overrode the protests, and they married in 1962, just before Uganda gained independence, a calculated scheme from the beginning. Malyam found herself both enchanted and overwhelmed by her husband's passionate nature. But after just 3 years of marriage, her fairy-tale romance began to unravel. Rumors of Amin's wandering eye had reached her through the grapevine, and she soon grew suspicious. Determined to find out the truth, Malyam concocted a plan that would force her husband to reveal his infidelity. Feigning a trip to her hometown to visit her parents, Malyam told Amin she'd be away for a few days, and he, likely seeing this as an opportunity to indulge, encouraged her to take her time. But Malyam had no intention of leaving for long. Later that night, she quietly returned to her home, creeping up to the house under cover of darkness. She walked into the living room, where she found Amin laughing and chatting with a senior officer. She barely paused as she strode into their bedroom, only to be met by the sight she had dreaded, a confrontation like no other. Lying on their marital bed was a naked woman. Fury surged through Malyam, and she unleashed her anger with swift, unrestrained violence, grabbing the woman's hair and hitting her. Amin, caught in a moment of utter surprise, tried to calm his enraged wife. But her fury could not be contained. For Malyam, the betrayal was not merely an affront to their marriage, it was a public humiliation. Amin offered profuse apologies, promising to remain faithful in the future. But within 4 months, his word proved worthless as he married the very woman who had been in their bed that night. Her name was Adroa, a woman from Amin's own region with whom he had shared a close, albeit complex, connection from childhood. They were distantly related through Amin's mother, and their families knew each other well. Kay had been raised in privilege compared to Amin. She was educated, articulate, and even attended the prestigious Makerere University, an experience that set her apart from Amin's own semi-literate background. This stark contrast made their union controversial, as her father, a clergyman, vehemently opposed the relationship. Despite the tension, Kay married Amin in 1966. Humiliation and power struggles. Malyam learned of the marriage through national television. She could hardly believe it. Her own husband, already tied to her by faith and law, had married again without even informing her. Humiliated and cornered by circumstance, she had no real choice but to endure. Financially dependent and now pregnant with their 4th child, she found herself at Amin's mercy. For the first few months, Malyam and Kay endured an uneasy peace, abiding by an arrangement that saw them alternating weeks with their shared husband. Despite the humiliation, they continued their marriage, bound by a cultural and religious framework that gave Amin the authority to dictate their roles in his life. Yet, Amin's faithfulness proved to be little more than a hollow promise. The rumors of a new mistress, Nora Aloba Enin, began to circulate, stirring further discord within the household. Both wives, dismayed by this latest infidelity, confronted Amin about his new relationship. For a moment, it seemed he might listen. He did not dismiss them outright. But his response soon took a violent turn, reflecting his darker, more brutal side. In a fit of rage, Amin punched Malyam to the floor before turning to Kay, whom he also assaulted. For several minutes, he let his anger lash out against them, leaving them bruised and shaken. Rivalries and resentments, but the conflict with Nora would not simply fade. Weeks later, Amin invited all three women to the same social gathering, hoping perhaps to force them into compliance. Malyam and Kay arrived, neither expecting Nora to be present. Seeing Amin dancing with her, however, pushed Kay over the edge. Tempestuous by nature, she could no longer contain her rage and tackled Nora to the floor in a public scene. Amin quickly intervened, but the consequences were severe. When they returned home, Amin's fury boiled over. He unleashed a brutal assault on the three women, blaming them for shaming him in public. Malyam, now 8 months pregnant, suffered the worst of it, nearly losing her unborn child from the violence. Only a week later, she learned Amin had married Nora, bringing her into the rotation of wives at his command post. Amin continued his pattern of adding and discarding wives as he pleased. In 1974, he divorced all three of his original wives and married Madina Namwandu, a woman who, by all accounts, had her own struggles in the dangerous orbit of Amin's desires. Later that year, Amin set his sights on Sarah Kailaba, a young woman who was already engaged and expecting a child with her fiancé. In a chilling display of ruthlessness, Amin ordered the assassination of her fiancé, eliminating any barriers to his pursuit. Shortly after, in a spectacle that captured international attention, he married Sarah in a grand ceremony attended by visiting African dignitaries. The unraveling of an empire built on desire, Amin's rule, like his love life, was chaotic and impulsive. His private and public lives reflected the same thirst for domination and control, whether over a nation or his personal relationships. His numerous marriages, affairs, and violent outbursts mirrored the volatility of his political career, where absolute loyalty was demanded, but often not reciprocated. Amin's wives, as well as his mistresses, were subjected to a kind of tyranny that underscored the nature of his character, brutal, self-serving, and relentless in his pursuit of pleasure and power. This pattern continued until his regime came crashing down in 1979. Fleeing to exile, Amin left behind a trail of broken lives and traumatized families. For many of his former wives, survival became the priority in the wake of his departure. They were left to rebuild, each carrying the scars of both physical and emotional of their turbulent years with him. Malyam, Kai, Nora, and Sarah were all women drawn into the gravitational pull of a man whose quest for power and pleasure knew no bounds, a legacy of pain and power. Amin's relationships with these women reveal more than just a dictator's appetite for control, they offer a glimpse into his fundamental worldview. For Amin, relationships were a means to an end, a reflection of his larger obsession with control and the tangible symbols of status and prestige. His wives were trophies, his mistresses fleeting distractions, and he engaged in relationships with the same ruthlessness he applied to governance. The narrative of Idi Amin's marital life serves as a grim reminder of how personal and political spheres can merge into a single destructive force. Though Amin's legacy is often reduced to his notorious actions on the political stage, the lives he touched personally also bear witness to his influence. The women who loved, feared, and ultimately survived him carry stories that underscore the human cost of power unrestrained by conscience or compassion. As history turns the page on Amin's life, his wives' stories stand as silent testaments to the painful realities that unfolded behind the scenes of one of Africa's most infamous regimes.